Me and my husband had got a cat, our previous cat. Her name was Pickles. And we had gotten her, now that would be, I think it's 7 years ago, we got Pickles. And we just have both always had pets growing up. And so we had this idea that we were going to get a cat. And so we went and found one. And my husband actually found a cat that was born on the same day as me. So he brought her home, and she was pretty great. She was probably one of the best pets we've ever had. And, but she was pretty active. And so we felt like she could use a friend. So for my birthday, he went and found Dill. So it could be Dill and Pickles together.
Love it.
And Dill is a Maine Coon Himalayan. So he's a big, fluffy white cat. And we had a orange tabby before. So they were really good friends. They were like almost like, I think Pickles thought that it was her kitten because she was like a year old, and we got him and he was just really a couple months old, really small. So she took care of him and they spent all their time together. And then I think it was, we had them for maybe a year. And one of our friends from back home was going through some tough times and needed someone to take care of his dog for a short period of time. It's just someone to watch him or watch her while he kind of figured out what was going on. So we drove to Edmonton and we picked up Kitty. We brought her back to Calgary and settled in with her. And for me, I've never had a dog before. My husband's had a dog and he was really excited. I was scared because I was scared of dogs. I've never had one before. So I was pretty unsure about it. And I was saying, as long as this is just temporary and I don't think I'm going to do anything with her because I'm too afraid to be alone with her. And at first we had separate areas for the cat and the dogs because I was afraid that the dog would do something to the cats. And because I'd never had a dog, so I didn't understand. So one day I came home from work and the cats were on one side of the baby gate that we had set up and the dog was on the other, and they had their paws reaching through to each other. And so I realized that maybe I might be wrong. So I took the baby gate down, and all of them that was probably about having her for about a couple weeks, they all just became really good friends. And because Dill was just a kitten, her and Kitty used to cuddle all day and hang out and wrestle, and they roll around on the floor and play around with each other. They play rough. I think Kitty kind of thinks that Dill is a little dog almost.
Right.
And then she treated Pickles like she would a cat. She chased her around and, went after her, and they had their fun times together. But her and Dill are definitely very attached to each other. You can catch them cuddling all the time, and the dog will hold the cat in her arms, and they're the same color. So we think that maybe she might think it's her puppy.
Right.
She just holds on to him and keeps him around. And because he's such a big cat, he actually got to be like the size of a small dog. So now she hangs out with him as if he's her little pup. And
That's so sweet that they get along so well. And, yeah,
they do. They're all really good. And unfortunately, Pickles passed away from a really rare leukemia when she was only a year old. So she
sorry for your loss.
She was gone, and Dill started to get really sick. So he was like really, really depressed, and he was sleeping for like long portions of the day. He wasn't eating, and he started to like kind of eat the dog's food and force himself to throw up. And he was doing all these things that were really, really concerning. And we took him to the vet, and she was thinking that because he'd always had a companion cat with him, maybe he just wouldn't be okay to be on his own.
Right.
And because he was there when Pickles passed away, he knew that she was gone. So he wasn't searching for her or looking for her. He knew that she was gone. So he had already accepted that and was kind of in his depression phase. And so because it was so concerning with his health and she was worried, he might not make it for too much longer because he's starting to get really, really sick. And what he was doing actually was he was from the stress, he was twisting up his organs on the inside of his body.
Oh my gosh.
To have he was coughing up blood and he would have blood in the litter box and all this stuff. And so we were starting to get really, really worried. And so she said, go and look for a cat that's as similar as you can find to your old cat. And as, not replace her, but find someone that he can feel that same sort of connection with. So I started looking at different shelters, and everyone I called in Calgary, they didn't really know their cats. They were saying, we have like hundreds of cats and they're all in foster homes and we don't know them well enough to tell you. You'd have to read all their bios online, and it just seemed crazy. And the woman at the pet store down the street from us suggested that we call a shelter. It's called Tales to Tell it's actually just outside of Calgary in a small town. And when I called her, she knew every single one of her cats by name and everything about them. She had just over 100 cats.
Oh my word.
And it was a free roam shelter. So they don't do cages. They just have them all in one big room and they all are together. And she knew every single one. So she sat and she listened to my story and listened to exactly what I was looking for in a cat and asked me a lot of questions. And when we finally got down to it, she said, okay, I hear you. You need Zoe. And so I said, okay. And she said, come down and meet her. That's who you need. And Zoe had been in the shelter since she was 6 months old, and she was 3.5.
Oh my gosh.
So she'd been there for 3 years. And the owner said she had thought about taking her home a lot of times, but she needs a lot of attention. And so she already had a lot of cats. And so it was really hard for her every time she took her home. She ended up bringing her back. And so she said, she's the dominant female cat that your boy is looking for. So I brought her home and they just became best friends. It was less than a month, and all of his tests were coming back normal from the vet. He was eating again. He had gained his weight back. He was happy. A month went by and 2 months went by and 3 months went by. And her old owner was coming to visit, at first every couple weeks. And then he was coming every month. And then one day he came down, and prior to Kitty being with us, she had a lot of anxiety. So she was kind of like, eating stuff in the house that she shouldn't have been eating, tearing apart clothes, ripping up carpets, stuff like that. And so they had been really concerned about having her in the house and leaving her alone. They kind of had to bring her everywhere because her anxiety was so high. And since we've had her, that all kind of went away, and she was very calm. And we never ran into problems like that with her ever. And we kind of explained that to her old owner. And after coming to visit quite a few times, he just said, I think that she needs to stay here. And at this point, I wouldn't feel right taking her back. So I'm going to leave her with you guys. And so, now we've had her for 6 years.
6 years. Wow.
She's definitely a husky mix. You can see that by looking at her. And she's got some shepherd in her for sure, but she's very skinny. So there's something in there that makes her so skinny. We don't know what it is. She's getting older now. She's 12 years old. So she's slowing down on her tricks, but her favorite trick, my husband taught her to jump over his back. So he bends down and she runs and she jumps over top of his back. He put peanut butter on a stick and held it over his back. And that's how he taught her how to do the trick.
I'm going to try that with Lisbon.
Yes.
For a 12-year-old dog, that's impressive. Okay.
Yeah.
So what made you change your mind and realize that, what made you fall in love with Kitty?
So it took me a while to kind of get used to her and comfortable. For a lot of people, they wouldn't say she's a big dog. For me, she was a big dog. I was like, she's so big. And At first it was seeing how good she was with the little kitten when we brought him home, and he was so tiny, and they were just spending all this time cuddling and playing with each other, and she was never rough with him and never did anything to hurt him. And I just thought that was so sweet, and it kind of changed my opinion of how, dogs can be with other animals. And then it with me and her, we weren't always like super close. My husband broke his leg a couple of years ago, and so I had to start walking her every day. And once I started walking her every day, we started to get really close. She started to kind of follow me all over the house and sleep next to me and giving me lots of attention. And that's when I realized, she's very, very sweet. She's one of the best dogs I've ever met. And it kind of just made me realize that maybe I had thought things about dogs that just weren't true.
She changed your mind. She changed your mind. Well, I mean, it really is unconditional love.
And she's just
she is. Hi, Kitty.
So,
Hi.
how could you not fall in love
I
with
know.
her?
How could you not love her? And I know. And so what's your favorite thing about Kitty?
I think my favorite thing about Kitty is how she still acts like a puppy, even though she's 12 years old. We will take her to the park and she will be, jumping around, going crazy, running, jumping over our backs, doing all these tricks. And people are like, oh my goodness, how old is she? And we'll say, ever since she was 9, we say, oh, she's 9, she's 10, she's 11, she's 12. And they go, months? And we're, no, years. Wow. Everyone is always shocked. They always say she looks like she's a puppy and she acts like she's a puppy. And yeah, I'm just always really impressed with what she can still do, even at this age. It's hard for me to know how old she is.
Wow, that's very impressive. And what about your kitties? What's your favorite thing about them?
My favorite thing about Zoe, I think, is just her quirkiness. Like, she will do the craziest things that you don't expect a cat. Like right now, she's on top of this book, this IKEA shelf I have with pull-out shelves, and she's pulling the boxes out with her paws, jumping into them and jumping out. And I'll see if I can flip the camera around for you. She's up there and she's jumping in and out of the boxes and coming back down and jumping in and out. And Dill is just watching her.
It's just like, that's my crazy cat. That's my crazy cat.
And he is my favorite thing about him is probably just how constantly tired he is. I've never seen a cat. He's awake for very short periods of the day, but he has a lot of, we call it his active hour. He goes crazy for like an hour and then he sleeps again for the rest of the day.
That's it.
He has a very cute lion cut.
Oh my gosh, he's a big boy.
He's a big boy.
Dill, you're a handsome guy. Like I'm camera shy. It's not an active hour. He's got to go sleep.
He's very cute.
He's very sweet. Aw. Well, okay. So if you had advice for someone who was thinking about getting a dog or maybe was a little afraid of dogs, like what would you say?
I would say give them a chance, honestly. And I think dogs can sense, what I learned from her is dogs can sense when you're afraid of them.
Right.
And stayed away from me because she knew I was afraid of her.
Yeah.
It's not like cats when you're afraid of them and they come all over you.
Yeah, exactly. They just, because they know, they're like, oh, this lady's afraid of me. I'm going to bug her.
Yeah. She stayed away from me because she knew I was afraid of her. And once I kind of started accepting her and we started spending more time together, just the affection she gave me was so amazing. And it's kind of an experience with a dog that like you can't have with another human, you can't have with another pet. It's just a connection that is really, really pure, and you won't experience it unless you give them a chance. So